and Brother Charles Watson, Brother Robert House, Brother Dre Clark, Brother Stephen Barrett, or is it Stephen Barrett?
Stephen.
Okay. Brother Fields and Brother Christopher Leonard, and also Brother Javon Greenway. All right. We are a group of Prince Hall Freemasons affiliated, focused on esoteric and occult and philosophical lessons found in Masonry. This being a public forum, it is not a legal interpretation or statement of any Grand Lodge, district, or local Masonic body. Any views or any opinions expressed by the panelists are solely that of the panelists and does not represent any Grand Lodge, district, or local Masonic body views or views of officials which the panelists hold membership of. All right, getting back to the topic for our agenda, understanding, we're talking about trauma and spiritual awakening based on traumatic experiences. Just to get you in to focus of what this topic is going into, what I'm presenting, and what will lead into the further discussion after I go into my little brief spill, where it's, if you put your mind focusing on the third degree and the situation that happened to Grandmaster Hiram Abiff, it'll set the scene for understanding of where I'm going with this. I got my notes, but as I said before, I like to ad lib stuff. I like to speak from the heart so you get the real me and not no stage stuff. And I like to keep it unscripted. And with the agenda, I got about what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 different areas I'll be focusing on. It's not a whole bunch of slides and things, but understanding trauma, the cost of living, self-generated hell, samsara, understanding death and dying, returning to your middle pillar, and the spiritual awakening in the midst of death. All right, what is trauma? Trauma, is generally defined as something that happens, it's a significant event that causes a disturbance in our flow or our energy. Hold on, let me see how I can minimize this. All right, pull you out to the side. All right, sorry about that. I'm trying to move this thing out my way so I can see my slide. All right, it's defined as a psychological emotional response to an event or experience that is deeply distressing or disturbing. When it comes to esotericism, it's a fear-generated trigger, and I find these 3 triggers that make people go into a specific type of trauma. It could be rape, murder, or the fear of insanity. And rape doesn't have to be like a physical rape of, as we are known to in society, as someone is actually taking taking advantage via sex. That is one form of rape, but you can be raped mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And it's like somebody stealing your wallet out of your back pocket. You maybe feel disturbed and you maybe feel violated. It's a form of rape. Anything that violates your body and your spiritual being could be a form of rape. And then we have that fear of murder. Everybody has that in their mind, especially with what's going on in today's society. You don't know if you're going to walk down the street and you get arrested, and then, or attempted to be arrested, and then somebody takes your life. Or you fearing somebody who is gun crazed in a shopping mall. You don't know. That fear of death is around us 24/7. And then it leads in all of these 2 things leading to the final set of fear, which is insanity, because we go insane thinking about all of these different mechanisms of which ways we can actually die. I mean, I remember back in the day, they used to have a TV show, Thousand Ways to Die. And watching that TV show, you sit up here and like, man, you literally don't know which way you're gonna go. It can be left, right, up, down, inside, outside, your friend, your family, or even just walking your dog and you trip on a curb and you bump your head, you're gonna die. So these fears lead to insanity. And I think the whole our underlying fear of death and dying is the route that we're going to die. And people fear the route of their death because they don't know when they're going to die. And when you look at the story of Grandmaster Hiram Abiff, and he's like, "This is not the time. This is not the place." And you take that into consideration when death comes, you're gonna be like, "It's not the time. It's not the place." But death don't care. Death is coming for you because death says, "Give me that word." And that word is going to come to you. And the word of death, it only comes once in a lifetime. And we'll figure that out when it comes to us. And it may be a different word for each individual. All right. The cost of living. Um, we have an irresistible inclination to destroy the existence of breathing creatures. I do not mean you're walking down the sidewalk and stepping on ants, although you might. Truly, every aspect of modern life is built upon destroying creatures willfully without cognizance. Everything that we buy, everything that we sell, everything that we eat and drink has to come at a cost. And that one cost, none of us recognize. When we look at everything we consume, it's a give and take situation, and that give and take situation is the cost of living, whether it be for food, clothes, or shelter, or any pretty much anything that's a tangible good. Um, it's the cost of living. And when you look at us as a species, we are, they say the zombies and all this stuff, but technically we are the walking dead. We're dead things walking, and we use other dead things to survive. We feed and harvest off of that energy, and that's the cost of living. That's the cost of having a breath. And these are things that most people do not take into consideration when we live and when we have life as we know it coursing through our veins and coursing through our body. Something has to sacrifice for each and every one of us to exist on this planet. And then at one day, we have to pay that cost back because the life force that gave us life is going to reclaim what it gave away. And that is the cost of living. Um, okay, self-generated hell. We have people who believe in hell, heaven and hell, and the circumstances of life. But these circumstances of life and hell are something that we generate, and ultimately it's due to our desire and our wants, and it's all egocentric, ego driven, and ego driven to fulfill sensations and the sense. It's something that we want to touch, feel, think, some emotion that needs to be fulfilled. And it's all self-driven, and we spend most of our time chasing after idle thoughts and idle things that really don't matter for another individual, but we take it in and it holds value to us. But in reality, what does it have for your spiritual awareness, and what does it have for your spiritual awakeness? Um, Granted, the first thing us as men, when we go look at a woman, we say, "Hey, man, she's beautiful. She's fine. She, first we thinking, not all the time, but majority of the time we thinking with the wrong head, and then eventually that wrong head leads to a self-generated hell per se. That's one aspect. It could be a car. You go buy a car, you say, "Man, I wanted this car. I've been saving all my money to go get this car." Then all of a sudden, this car becomes a sunk hole, and you spending all your money on a piece of crap. and it can't even get you to point A to point B. Same thing as far as work. You say, hey, I've been spending all my time going to school, getting educated to get this particular job. Then you go to work and you in hell because you miserable. It's nothing you want to do. And it's all because of ignorance. And that ignorance is to feel a desire or something that we want. But at the time, we don't know if it's good or bad for us. And unfortunately, that's the law of karma. And in the book of James, James 3:9, for the kind of beast and of birds and of serpents and of things of the sea is tamed and hath been tamed of mankind. But the tongue can no man tame. It is unruly, evil, full of deadly poison. Therewith bless we God. Even the Father hath therewith cursed we men with are made after this similitude of God. Man, that one right there, when you think about subduing your passions and you think about higher degrees in masonry, one of them speaking of silence and secrecy. And it's when you start thinking that silence and secrecy, it's not a silence and secrecy to the speak of that degree per se, but a silence secrecy to yourself, because sometimes we get overzealous. And I'm not gonna lie, a couple of my rants on Facebook the last couple of days because of things that I was seeing, but it's because we're not silent and keeping stuff secret to ourselves. Some things we need to keep to ourselves, and it's not secret to the organization, but some things just are better not said due to keeping good to the order of the group. And I'm not gonna lie, but it's human nature, and I fail to do that at times. And but at when you speak into that, a lot of people who tend to say what they have on their mind tend to cause a self-generated hell. And the first thing come out their mouth is, "Man, they just hating on me," or they just don't, they don't agree with me because they know I'm right, or they don't agree with me because whatever. But it's not that a person doesn't agree with you. It's about you keeping your mouth open and you saying stuff that drive people crazy, and they just don't want to deal with you. And you might even have a great topic you're discussing, and at the same time you turn off these people, and then you may not look at it as being a self-generated hell, but you create a hell of loneliness because you don't have anybody who's going to sit there and talk to you and listen to you, because you've cut them off by being arrogant, by being uh, could be vulgar or anything of that nature. But that's part of self-generated hell. And um, continuing on with self-generated hell, it comes from the mind, the heart, and the motor instinctual sexual instinctive brain. These three centers, as you know, your mind, you think it, your heart, you feel it, and your instinct, you go out and you go get it. And these three things are either they create heaven or they create hell. And sometimes they, if they're in sync together as far as mind, heart, and sex in a positive way, you three must agree in unity. And some of y'all might know where I'm going with that, but I'll leave that on to another topic. But if your three channels of energy are agreeing, that's that middle pillar working in upward momentum, and is forcing like kundalini and chakra openings and things like that. But if it's going in the opposite direction, it's a force called like the kunda buffer. And the kunda buffer is like an organ that it basically shoots out the other end, and it is basically your negative energy. These negative energies, they create essentially hell, is psychological hell in the depths of our mind, in the depths of our body. And that energy, we as humans, you can give that energy off to other people. uh, your negative energy feeds your whole family, your positive energy feeds your whole family. So if you using that energy in the wrong way, you using those three centers in the wrong way, you're gonna walk around in hell in your house all the time. It's gonna be chaos in your house. It's gonna be chaos in your work environment. It's gonna be chaos everywhere you go. I think, when you walk in a store and you see somebody who just got this negative grimace on their face, and to me, I'm like, man, you walking in hell. Why are you smiling? I mean, life is beautiful. And well, for me, that is. But I see people walking around like that, and I'm just like, why you got a mean mug? Life ain't about mean mugging. And it's a self-generated hell. It's a self-generated stress. It's a self reaction, and the emotions that we create in our subconscious and our infraconscious. This is what drives it, and it could come from pride, anger, trauma, or feelings of hurt, and or the will for revenge or justice. And right now, when you look at what's going on in the world, we got a lot of people who sitting out here wanting revenge and wanting justice. But in reality, I don't want to go too far off into this. In reality, it I mean, that's somebody else's karma and situation. We all agree that the situation was wrong. However, as Brother Coney stated earlier in the text, when we were discussing, he said, I'm still breathing. And with that being said, we all need to still breathe, because if we breathe, we're saying we're going to get through this. But if we're going to stop breathing, that means we caught in our emotions, and we're going to sit up here and we're going to fight, and we're not going to heal. And we have to heal, and we have to breathe, and we have to keep going. Um, Justice will be served, hopefully, and hopefully justice be served in due time and quickly. And I'll leave that situation alone. Um, but these same forces, we create our suffering, we create our traumas, we create our own prison. You can also utilize this same energy to destroy these prisons and break yourself out of these jails by recognizing that the house we live in is an actual prison. What I mean by that is that if we get stuck in our own head and our own emotions, we create our own prisons, and we can't escape from them prisons until we come up with the ways to cope with what's going on around us. Um, I'm not sure if anybody is a fan of a TV show called Lucifer, but
Oh
Lucifer,
yeah,
yeah, Lucifer,
great show.
he specifically said in one episode, he said, the doors of hell open both ways. It's up to you if you want to come out. I'm just here to sit here and make sure that you ready to come out. And when he said that, I was like, huh, interesting. So basically what it is that your mind, if you sit up here and let your mind eat away at you and destroy your being, you have put yourself in a hell. And it may be due to something that you did that you can't get over with. And that is where you have to come together and get yourself out of this hole and bring yourself up. Um, Not too many people in this world that I can say knows what it feels like to hit rock bottom. Um, I for I, for one, can say I've hit rock bottom inside myself, and starting from the bottom and having to claw my way up to where I'm at now. But some people don't understand that, and those people would be the main candidates that would suffer in hell, because they don't know what it feels like to come from nothing and have nothing, or be at the bottom and then have to work your way up. And whether that be physically, spiritually, or emotionally. And people who have never felt grief, pain, loneliness, or suffering, they don't understand. Me, I lost my mother when I was 25. I lost my sister when she was 29, and I just lost my brother 2 years ago. And I literally have my two daughters, my wife, and my father. Other than that, I have my extended relatives, but the people who actually know me and grew up with me in the same house with me, uh, there's none. I have nobody that I connected to for the 18 years that I was born. Me and my father lived in separate houses, but the people I grew up with, they're non-existent. So I suffered a while, and it took me a long time to overcome that. And that was my self-generated hell. And it took me to having my kids to pull myself out of this rut that I was in. I'm not gonna lie, I was depressed. I saw counseling and everything, and because I was in a rut. People don't like to talk about counseling or the negative things about themselves, but if you want to overcome and achieve to get yourself to a better light, you got to do things like that. Army has programs and other companies have programs. Military has like master resilience and things like that. Nowadays, with today's society, it's a psychological warfare between yourself, your environment, and the news, the media, everything around you. So you got to talk these things out. You can't sit up here and hold these in. If you want to end hell now, you got to, if you don't want to go to hell in the future, you got to end it now. And you got to take a stance for yourself and break yourself out of these prisons. All right. Next topic, samsara. Those who don't understand emptiness will fail to achieve liberation. Thus, ignorant beings wander helplessly in a prison of the six cyclic instances existence of. One of them is samsara. Samsara is the flow on or the cyclical existence. Samsara is your mind's diluted form descending with the view from above. Um, this is more of a Hindu Eastern tradition, nirvana and samsara. Nirvana would be what we call heaven, and samsara would be just general life. And general life and living, meaning that you live a life of reoccurring events, meaning you're always going to come back and come back to being a living, we're born, we die, we're born, we live, we die, we're born, we live, we die. That's samsara. Whereas nirvana is an escape from this reality. But what most schools of thought don't teach, and including most Western theologies, they don't teach that nirvana or heaven is something that's only temporary, that you eventually will come back to samsara. In Eastern tradition, they teach that you go to nirvana. It may be for 1 minute, it may be for 1,000 years. It depends on your level of karma, and your level of karma tells you how long you can live in paradise or how long you're gonna come back, or how long you're gonna come back. But regardless of the situation, you always gonna come back. The stay is temporary on both sides. So when you desire and you want to go to heaven all the time, and that's the only thing you're thinking about is going to heaven, you're gonna go to heaven. Yeah, maybe, but you're gonna come back eventually. And that's something that's built in as a coping mechanism of the ego. All right. Understanding death and dying. Death itself is a return to the original point of departure. A person is what his or her life is. If a person does not work on his life, he does not try to modify it. Obviously, he's wasting his time miserably, because a person is nothing more than what his life is. We have to work on our own lives, in order to make it a masterpiece. Only by dying within ourselves can we whiten the brass of contemplation of the night sun, the sun being the father. This means that we must overcome temptations, eliminate each and every one of our inhuman elements which we carry within us, which are anger, avarice, lust, envy, pride, laziness, gluttony, etc. And the seven deadly sins. These seven deadly sins basically are the blocking points of our seven chakras. Once we release all of these items inside of our chakra points, essentially you can ascend to nirvana while you're living. But you have to break out of all of these different vices that we hold within. It is a wisdom that knows when there is death, then new things emerge. But if there is no death, any new thing that emerges will be corrupt, because it will be corrupted by all the impurities that remain. remain there. The path of the Bodhisattva. So what this is talking about, this is kind of like going from the dead level to the living perpendicular. When you sit up here and if you say you're going to be a real master mason, and then you go in and you receive that um, dead level to the living perpendicular, and you bring those things with you, you ain't gonna do nothing but have a corrupted, you just gonna be a corrupted member of the craft. And as you see, we have a lot of corrupt members of the craft because they didn't cast those things to the wayside. And it's a process. And yes, individual will continue to have these things, but it's an art of dying, dying while you're living. And once you realize that you have these things going on with you, you have to cut them out. Each time you go through the degree process, and although you are not receiving the degree, you should be taking away something from what's going on in the ceremony. Every time somebody's being raised from a dead level to a living perpendicular, you should be reflecting on these things, and it should be hitting home to you and should be resonating on why you have to cut these things out. If you just going through the motions of bringing somebody through, you in the wrong business. And I hate to say it, we got a lot of brothers in the wrong business, and somebody, they may disagree with me on this, but at the end of the day, if you're not focusing on yourself when you're bringing another brother through, why are you doing it? Because while you're building him, you should be building yourself. You should be removing these impurities out of your character and bringing yourself back into your center. And at the same time, once you kill those old habits and those old vices and things inside yourself, what essentially happens is that you're able to obtain a new way of doing things, a new way of understanding things, a new way of projecting things. If you keep, it's basically like having a toolbox. Why you gonna have 5 Phillips screwdrivers that are all stripped inside of there, plus a hammer that you can't even do anything with? You got all these rusty tools in your bag that ain't doing nothing but clogging up space. But you got these new shiny tools over here you can use, but you don't want to use them. Or you can't put them in your toolkit because you got these old things you don't want to get rid of. That's the exact same thing. You have to, and that's the same thing with your mind and your thoughts. In order to get new things and new feelings, new emotions, and a new way to grasp life and the reality around you, you gotta let those old things die. The importance of death, and I just pretty much touched on this on the other slide, but it develop you need to develop your awareness of death and become cognizant that you will die, and both literally and spiritually and emotionally. Uh, but how we do it is we prepare to die while we're living. Uh, if you understand that you're going to die and you think about death while you're living and you focus on um, not death itself, but your you're preparing your family, preparing everything for you to die. When that process comes, it's going to be something real simple to the people around you, and it's something that everybody is just going to accept as a law of nature and a law of cause and effect. So uh, at the end of the day, death is it brings forth new light. I talked about it earlier today on Facebook with the post that Brother House published, and I think that was Brother House, but and I posted the picture of Kali Shakti, and a couple brothers was like, "Hey, what does that picture mean?" And I gave the real simple answer, which and it had actually there was the brother asking the question about was hiring to retire a widow's son, and I said yes. And Stanley Brooks, that's who asked it. But and the reason I said yes is because when you look at uh, the widow is Mother Nature, and uh, The father is Father Time, and Mother Nature wins against Father Time all the time. And in order to give birth to a new creation, which is the sun. So when one thing is cast away, another thing takes its place. You have to have that motherly figure to cultivate and bring forth new light. The father will generate the source of creation, but it's the mother that cultivates it. And that mother, being Kali Shakti, is that motherly force of creation, Mother Nature, and she is the widow, and the new creation is the widowed son. Most people, they won't understand that, but hopefully, by if they watch this video, they'll understand where I'm coming from after today. Like I said, this body is nothing but a shell. This existence is meant to end, and we should get used to that fact and start reducing our attachment to this body and the things around us that we say makes us us and what we're living for. Are we really living for the things around us, or are we living for to fulfill our ego or a sense of belonging? At the end of the day, you're gonna have to be ready to cut that away. Now, granted, nobody wants to die, but you have to be ready to cut it away when that scythe comes swinging. Um, Again, death provides an opportunity to realize it, understand that we need to understand these three parts of psychology and train now how to comprehend the difference between them. You got the ego, the essence, and the personality. Now, the ego is a conjunction of different and inhuman. It's elements of you. I mean, you got positive ego, but you got negative ego, and it's okay to have ego, but the negative parts of ego is basically all mental facets of us. Then the essence is what we call soul, and this I guess this soul you recognize this through the pineal gland, and this essence is it tends to be trapped inside our ego. It's our willpower, and not to go far off in a tangent, but the ego should, if you look at it as a biblical representation, that's Cain, whereas the essence is Abel. The soul is Abel. We constantly sacrifice our soul and our essence to the ego so the ego can be fulfilled to get what they want. And in truth, um, the only thing that can come from it is that we have to kill the ego to free our souls, and not the good ego, but the bad parts of us. In the Bhagavad Gita, take perceptual experience in the nature of consciousness as the path. Um, what this is focusing on is the experience of your soul struggling those between your ego and your willpower. You got to focus on these things to be able to release one from the other. When the ego has a grasp on that soul, you got to look at it at that given moment, and you got to realize it immediately. And that basically means you got to be here and now in order to let go of the ego to free the soul and move on forward to a better conscious awareness of what your situation and what you're going through. And this is the awakening on a conscious path. Bodhisattva is the wisdom mind, the essence of wisdom. If you understand the story of Buddha, Buddha sat under a Bodhi tree, which is similar to the tree of life in the Kabbalah. And it also goes and it coincides with the sprig of acacia, that everlasting life, that essence of wisdom. Uh, it means regeneration and being awakened. And that's what that Bodhi tree represents. That's what essentially, when you understand the meaning behind the crucifixion and the two beams of the cross, the vertical and the horizontal beams, those same beams represent the exact same aspects of being an awakened mind under wisdom. Um, Then when you think about the personality, personality is pure energy, and nobody is really born with personality. Personality is developed on this level and in existence. So if you believe in reincarnation or the law of reoccurrence or the law of return, personality essentially is what's born with this body, and it comes with the environment you're around. Uh, every environment you are born in or reincarnated in will be different, or once you've been raised again, that environment should be different, and that personality is developed based on that environment. So if you grew up in a happy environment, you might develop a happy and bubbly personality. If you grew up in a rough and rugged environment, you might have a rough and rugged personality. But it's that energy that's given to you from that situation that you've been put in into this new embodiment. But at the end of the day, what you have to cut away is also the personality and the ego for the essence and the soul to emerge. And that's your real you. The other two, they're just, I guess you can say, your stand ins, your actors, or your co signers, your stunt doubles. But they don't represent the real you. And the real you, most of us don't even know the real us. We're still trying to figure it out. And that's that lost word. And before I jump onto that, I'll move on. Um, how we die. Um, um, how to die. Basically, we should die while we're living. We have to understand suffering, and we have to be serene in the midst of pain and suffering, and detach ourselves from that situation and be able to move forward. Um, this life is instantaneous. If we look at the grand scale of the universe being billions of years old, uh, within a blink of an eye, we're like a flash of lightning that strikes. We're here and we're gone. And the chariot wheel or the universe and life keeps rolling along the same way, even though this being has ceased. So, with that being said, uh, as it's been said, the being of the past moment of thought has lived, but does not live, nor will it live. The being of the future moment of thought will live, but has not lived, nor does it live. The being of the present moment of thought does live, but has not lived or will live. If you think about I am that I am, and you look at the what was written in the hieroglyphs about Isis when she says, I am that was, is, and always shall be. You take that into perspective and you realize that uh, everything is a continuum. There is no beginning, there is no end, there is no present. It's all now. And we have to live in the now. Even when we die, we have to live in the now. We have to understand when we die, it's now. And you have to be able to focus on that and to experience life and to teach life. And yeah, the self is death and truth is life. The cleaving the self is a perpetual dying, while moving in truth is partaking in nirvana, which is life everlasting. Um, essentially, what I'm saying here is that um, you die in yourself if you sit up here and you focus on things that you can't have and you can't obtain, trying to fulfill the ego, but not realizing that the beauty of life isn't in an object or in a person or a thing, but the beauty of life is an experience. That's nirvana, and that's real living. And that's how you break away from hell. And that's how you die, understanding that, again, like I said, we are the walking dead. And when you realize that when you're gone, that all this personality, all this ego, it stays here. and the real you moves on to another body or to something else. We don't know. Uh, I haven't seen anybody come back from the dead. Actually, if Lazarus is real, he's still walking around, as Brother House would say. Uh, but again, the soul is a receptacle of the psychological self-conscious. It is a place where the inner alchemy of the psychological metabolism occurs. We work when our work is done there, the subtle changes and like its parallels metabolic level in the body, there's a sense of ill or well-being. However, the time scale of the soul is not limited to the daily, monthly rhythm, but to the periods of the sun, Mars, and Jupiter. Um, I found this in I found this in the book of the Bodhisattva, that last verse. And what's essentially what I pulled out of it is that um, the universe will call you back to wherever you need to be at that given moment. Uh, and we, from who's born, no traveler returns. If you take that into concept with this, you look at it, uh, once the time comes. And like I said previously, you just got to be prepared for it and be ready to go. Uh, we don't know the time, we don't know the place. We just got to be ready. um, returning to your middle pillar. Uh, Returning to your middle pillar is basically you got your two hemispheres. You got your hot and your cold, um, your mildness and your severity, or your positive and negative, and you have to bring those into balance and equilibrium. And this once again goes into higher degrees, but at the same time, it's found in the Blue Lodge. When you look at it, uh, as I still spoke before, your three brains, your mind center, your heart center, and your sexual instinctive center. And in death and Egyptology or Egyptian mysteries and the Egyptian Book of the Dead, you meet Anubis, and Anubis has got your heart weighed against your feather, weighed against a feather and a jar on the scales of balance. And when you think about it, you have to have both of them in perfect equilibrium uh, in order to enter the world of creating a soul or your soul advancement. If not, if you don't have the psychological advancement or balance, you're going to return to either a worse situation or to the exact same situation you're in. And basically, what I'm saying is, again, you have to have balance. Your mind and heart have to be in sync, and your motor, instinctual, sexual energy, all of that has to be in sync. Those three must agree in unity in order for you to achieve and go higher in yourself and in spirituality. Um, Life itself is the middle way. It's self-conquest, which leads to a complete cessation of suffering and sorrow, which is nirvana, the ultimate goal of the Buddhists. It's known as the Eightfold Noble Path, which consists of understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Basically, this is putting your body in a tone and putting your body in a balance with essentially almost some of the things that you find inside of masonry. Having an understanding of the people around you, having an understanding of life and society, found in masonry. And when you start looking at the middle chamber, the seven liberal arts and sciences, and you can put this to that. And just when you look at the seven liberal arts and sciences, they coincide with this by helping you get into that right mind, just to be a good pillar in society and be a good person in your environment and your surroundings. So with that being said, if you got these things intact in regards to death and spiritual awakening, you're awakening your soul to a higher level of understanding by putting your middle pillar in check by performing these actions and also following the Buddha's middle way. And spiritual awakening in the midst of death, consciousness arises and the mind and the body, or namarapa, thus the body, rapakaya, is complete, and the mental group, namakaya, which is feeling, perception, mental formations together with consciousness, are representative of the supporting each other. Now, the reference I got these quotes from was from, again, it was the Buddha's, the Path of the Buddha, the Buddha's Necklace, and also The Three Mountains by Samael Aun Weor. The body needs to be living as it is for us here and now, for the consciousness to arrive. What it means by the body being living, but not a physical living per se. Yes, we have to be physically living, but we have to be in good spirit, have to be aware of what's going on and be aware of our surroundings for our consciousness to arrive in order to receive higher understanding. If you in a rut and you always in a rut, your mind is never going to be ready to achieve and receive greater light or further light in masonry or in life, period. One thing that happens is when death or tragedy happens, a lot of people may receive a spiritual awakening, whether if it's a near-death experience for them or a death of a loved one. It basically puts you in the mind frame to start thinking about other things, and essentially it creates that doorway to awakening. If you look at it, if you understand the signs of what's going on around you, and you observe your surroundings, you can turn a trauma or a tragedy into your spiritual awakening by you taking a step back and not looking at the grief per se, but looking at the situation and then what you can do better to improve your situation and to get your mind wrapped around the time for transformation, not only in yourself, but in the things around you. In this profound revelation, a person's energy moves and starts to transform you. It heals old wounds, dissolves false beliefs and illusions, and shifts you towards the truest way of expressing yourself and living your life. And essentially, that's what I was just saying. If you take that trauma, you're going to start focusing on how to live your life better. If you're serious about moving forward and growing from a bad situation or a trauma that's happened to you, or a trauma that has affected you either personally or globally, like this situation that we're in right now with what's going on in America. If you take this and you take those situations and you learn from it and you put your mind in the right shift and you express yourself to go on living, because you don't know what's going to happen to you at the end of the day. So you go on living, you go on breathing, and then you take that and you just keep moving forward and you keep driving forward until your actual end comes to you. And that is it for my presentation. I hope y'all enjoyed that. And that's the place setter, brothers. I hope y'all like that.
Excellent. I got one question though. I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget it, because it was phenomenal. I don't know if you planned this or it just happened. On one of the slides, you was talking about death, and I don't know, your light was off, and then when you start talking about life, you turned the light on. So I don't know if that was just hey, go back and see. I'm serious. I was like, I wonder if he planned that out. Literally, we couldn't really see you. It was dark. And you were talking about death and all of that. And then as soon as you switched to talk about life, you cut the light on and went boom. I went, oh man, I wonder if that was coincident. I gotta know, brother. Did you plan that or that just how it happened?
That's just how it happened. I did not.
Okay. Man, go back. Hey, when you go back and watch the video, you're gonna see what I'm saying. Literally, you were talking about death, and as soon as you start talking about life, you click the light on. Boom.
Oh, I did not notice that at all.
Yeah, yeah.
I noticed that.
Did you
Yeah,
notice it too?
I noticed
Yeah,
that too.
yeah. That I'm telling you,
I
man.
think he planned that.
I think he did too, man. Literally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome presentation, brother. Awesome.
Yeah, and like I said, it's just just thinking about what's going on in the world right now, and death is around us, death becomes us, but nobody really wants to cope with death. Everybody runs from it, but it's essentially something that's going to happen, and we gotta face it, and you got to put yourself in the right mind to be able to deal with it. And then we've all taken those OBs, and those OBs speak to things like that. And when you understand the nature of the OB, it's essentially when you cutting away some things, you cutting away those vices within inside you. And you have to, like, I mean, if you reading the rituals or you're reading these books, you just reading, but if you're not absorbing what's going on and what's being said, and you look at the certain things that go on with your body, like for instance, if pancreatic cancer or pancreatic cancer, colon cancer, anything down in that particular area, it's something that you got to go to a doctor to get cut out to be better. And if you put that in the perspective of masonry and put that in the perspective of your living in your life, you got certain things that you gotta be cut out in order for you to live that spiritual life.
That's profound.
Yeah.
That's those soufflurities in life.
Right.
That's facts. Yeah. Great presentation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, the floor is open, brothers. Let's build.
My brother, I'm glad you peeled back that onion, that layer of the onion. When you talk about death, I think that a lot of us, a lot of times, obviously, it's something that we fear because we fear the unknown. But the reality is, at some point, your body becomes a limitation.
Right.
It's a limitation. You have to release yourself. And I think it's just tough for us to internalize that and apply it to our lives every single day, to walk and navigate this life like we really truly understand that. So I just wanted to thank you for the presentation. It was beautiful, it was relevant, and I felt like it was just me and you on here, brother. Like you were speaking directly to me. So I appreciate you.
No doubt, brother. Just providing a perspective on some things. I was essentially, when I was putting this together, I tried to keep it blue because I touched on some things, and if y'all been there, y'all know exactly what I touched on.
Yes, sir.
But now, Brother Watson, I did that intentionally. So I like to tie some things in, so brothers in other houses, they'll see it and they go, huh? Hold on, let me go back and read this again. I see what he's talking about, Yeah, especially, some people sitting in front of camps, they know exactly what I'm talking about.
That's right. There was a couple of things coming from the Scottish Rite. I'll tell you, just with some of the events from this week, I think that some of us on here may have been kind of overzealous. We all get that way, right? Yeah. And it kind of reminded me of a lesson in the Scottish Rite. If you remember that degree, they went out to get the ruffians. The first time they went out to get the ruffians in, and King Solomon. Yeah, King Solomon said, "Hey, man, just bring them back." And my man went and said, "Nah, man." He went and got that ruffian. Remember, he cut that ruffian head off right on
like, yaka.
Boom. And they was about to, remember, King Solomon was about to put him to death. But King Solomon was wise enough not to take what he had did on face value. He said, what is his real motive? Where's his heart really at? And man, that just ringed home for me. The first time I read that degree and I studied, I said, man, that's me. I've gotten myself in trouble throughout my life, and I didn't mean no harm. I'm zealous. I'm passionate about what I do. And sometimes that overzealousness can come off the wrong way. But if you got a wise brother that can see that, nah, this brother don't mean no harm. He's a zealot, you know? Real good lesson in there though.
Yeah, that's where that saying "charge it to my head and not to my heart"
There
comes
you
in.
go. There you go. Remember, grandmama and grandpa used to tell us that.
Absolutely,
You know?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, charge it to the head, not to the heart. But sometimes, but if your head and your heart and other things in agreement, like I said it a couple times, we three must agree.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And for me, I liked your intro because I just find it ironic a lot of the times when we speak on certain subjects, how it's more meaningful when you're able to relate it to real life situations. And when you went into causing our own heaven or causing our own hell, the light bulb went off in my head. First thing that came to my mind, if for some of us who are probably familiar with that, was the Pygmalion effect, where you have those self-fulfilling prophecies based on how you view yourself, your environment, and everybody else around you lead to the decisions that you make and your own self-worth and how you feel about yourself. And, that kind of resonated with me when you were speaking. And I was like, wow, that's a trip how we're esoterically speaking, but this is reality. I'm like, wow, I like how you put that in that frame where I was able to relate to it based off of that.
And that's what I with everything I try to do. The way I was taught by my grandfather was that you have to relate masonry to your daily life. You have to relate masonry to you. You can't relate masonry to another individual. You can't relate masonry to masonry itself, but you have to relate it to yourself. You have to take those tools that masonry gives you and use them and utilize them to build you up. And I lost, and speaking of my grandfather, I lost him last summer. It'd be June 19th or 20th, 2019. My grandfather died 89 years old. And when I came through, I came by myself through the lodge. And but my grandfather was one of my old past masters that was my study buddy. And he had me spitting like fire, had me, call me in the middle of the night, hey boy, know that OB, know this and know that. And when he died, he was fully cognizant that his body was shutting down. And the only thing he said, man, I just want some water. I just want something to eat. I know it's coming. And the strength of that is the strength I want to have when it's time for me to go, is to face it and know it's coming and keep moving.
Based on what you were saying, I think that what we learn as initiates and whatnot when it comes to death is how to live our life to the fullest. So then when we do meet death, we aren't kicking and screaming like that to hang on to this life,
Right.
to be okay with letting go of the only life that we know and to just be, if you get what I mean.
Right.
That when we say know thyself, what self are we really trying to know? Is it the flesh and bones that we're trying to know, or are we trying to get to know the spirit, the soul within man that exists
That
on
essence.
throughout eternity, that energy? Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for pointing that out.
Right. And that's where I was getting at when we say we're getting raised from that dead level to that living perpendicular. And when you look at that, you cutting away those certain things to you cutting away those vices, and you're trying to raise that soul to the living perpendicular. And what's that?
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Please repeat that. Please repeat that.
Yeah, what I said is that you leaving all of that, your ego's vices and everything on that dead level. And then you trying to raise your soul to the living perpendicular. And basically that's bringing that righteous you forward and leaving all the bull crap that you did, or your ego, you leave that behind. And I said it on one of the slides. If you bring all of that stuff that you were meant to leave behind with you, only thing you're doing is bringing a corrupt individual forward. And that corrupt person will not do anything but create and breed more corruption. And when we're in the lodge and we're doing the degree work, we have to do that with the brothers. We still have to look at that ritual and look at those degrees as if we're the ones going through every time. In 21 years that I've been a Mason, and every degree work that I've been involved in, that I've participated in, I put myself as the candidate, even though I was the WM or whatever seat I was in, even in the other houses, being a captain of the degree team on the Scottish Rite and a York Rite, bringing brothers through. I put myself in a situation of being that candidate that was looking for light. And when you put yourself in a situation of the candidate that's looking for light, it renews your experience every time. And if you are a leader of a Masonic body, the High Three, you should be feeling that when you go through and you bring candidates through whatever house you're in, especially in a blue house. If you in a blue house and you sitting in the East, you should feel what that candidate's feeling every time you braise somebody. If you're not feeling what that candidate's feeling, why you there? And I think that's one of my problems, that my zealousness kicks in, because why are you there if you're not getting anything out of it? If you just saying, oh, I just brought this brother through. No, when I brought this brother through, I brought myself through again, every time. 21 years, that's how I did it. And when you're sitting in a lodge, opening and closing, you got to fill those seats. You got to sit in those seats. And while another brother's sitting there, you got to look at him and see what's going on in his mind. And not to sharpshoot him and say, oh, you got that word wrong. You got that. But look at him and see that passion in the words that he's saying, and seeing if he's feeling it. Say it as if you sitting there. And, if a brother's stutter stepping there, he's getting it wrong, and you want to pull him out of that book, or you want everybody to be out of the book. When I was the worship master, and actually my entire York Rite, I'm like, ain't none of us doing anything in this book. If when it come to degree work, if we putting on degrees, we practicing, because at the end of the day, you don't know who's going to be the next Grand Master, the next Grand High Priest, the next Grand Thrice Illustrious Master, the next Grand Eminent Right Worship Grand Eminent Commander. You don't know who you bringing through. So what you need to do is put yourself in their shoes and give them the experience of a lifetime. And don't nobody want to sit up here and see you with a book in your hand going, and on the Scottish Rite, it's a little hard to do that, but it's at least put on a show and give them that. Brother House, can you see that real quick? It disappeared.
Yeah, faded out.
Hell yeah.
I'm piggybacking off of that. Oh, go ahead, sir.
I just want to introduce myself, Brother Chris Lewisell, Hannibal Lodge number 8, Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Maryland. I was going to piggyback on what Brother Williams was saying real quick, because I know Brother Watson's got something to say. But when I was speaking to my senior steward and my junior steward, when we were doing our last degree, I asked him, I said, what did you go through? I said, how were you divested? You know what I mean? So that it's not, most times brothers stand up there when we ask them, how should the candidate be prepared, so on and so forth, and they'll just spit the words off, but they're not connecting that to their experience. So if you know what you went through, you're not going to have the left side up and we in the second degree. You know what I mean? you got to make sure, you remember what you went through, and that'll keep you tight. But anyway, I digress. Brother Watson.
That's good stuff, man. Yeah, I just want to piggyback off of what was said, especially because I teach it like that. You know, as far as it has to mean something to us, right? It can't just be about a Hiram and Biff. And I say this, and I don't say it in a negative way. I really don't care about no Hiram and Biff from 2,000 or 3,000 years ago in 2020, right? So when we teach this thing, we gotta make it walk and talk in our lives. And as you mentioned earlier, I teach that rubbish pile is where the vices and superfluities are in life. That
Right.
deals with my life. And when you say
That's nice.
you were risen on the living perpendicular, that one little piece I was waiting for you to give it is you also are now standing on the square. The square of what? Virtues. So you have been risen from a life full of vices and superfluities to a life of being on the square, in the square of virtues. Wanted to throw that out there.
Sorry, I forgot about that, but
No,
thanks for bringing it.
yeah. I was like, he gonna say it. He gonna say it. But at the end of the day, I like the way you teach that, and we should all pick that up. It has to be real. Don't tell me about a rubbish pile. Okay, it's a rubbish pile. What is that gonna do for me today in 2020? Because it's really dealing with that part of me that needs to die, the vices and the superfluities. If we go
Mhm.
back and we look at the 3 tracing boards, right, from the first degree, the one thing that I looked at in reference to leading up to death, I forget which brother said it early on about, I think it was Stephen. He said that um, this life that we live prepares us to die. And in actuality, masonry prepares us to die. In the first degree, you have something, you're here on earth, you're trying to get to heaven, you got this thing that you climb, right? It's called a ladder. And we know that a ladder, it takes a lot of effort to get up a ladder, right? So that's life itself. Then when we go into the second degree, we got another thing we got to climb. And we can't even see where it's going. It's a winding staircase. Getting back to what Brother Williams was saying, when I saw what he was going to talk about, immediately when he said get back to the middle pillar, I started thinking about the second degree. I said, well, I got a pillar over here, got a pillar over there, and I gotta walk that middle pillar. I gotta walk up this winding staircase. Then we get to the third degree. The third degree, just dealing with one of the emblems, which is the hourglass. The hourglass teaches us about life, being human, right? But now we finish crossing the bridges. And that's what I call that ladder. That ladder is like a bridge. The winding staircase is a bridge. That's the life that we live. Now we got to go through the gate. We done made it across the bridge. But now when we get to that third degree, we go through that gate, and that gate that we go through is death. And masonry does a really good job of preparing the mind to accept the fact that we are going to encounter death. And it shouldn't be something we dread, like, oh God, I'm dying. Like you mentioned with your grandfather. I think that being a Mason and living his life, he had already accepted those terms that I'm going to cross this bridge called life, and one day I'm going to have to go through that gate, or what some of us would say, tiling that door of the celestial lodge above.
Yeah, my grandfather had, I think, either last year or the year before, he got his 50-year pen.
Wow, beautiful.
He never did get his 33rd degree. We were going to all try to do it with me and him, but when I got mine, but he had broke his hip. And essentially, once he broke his hip, that's when everything started going downhill.
Falling apart. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But go ahead.
Real quick to Brother Watson, what he was talking about, and then Brother Williams, relating this back to your own personal life. So when we were thinking about this whole entire situation, I was thinking about my father. My father, same similar situation. He was actually in a medically induced coma. And then when he came out, it was about like, he was in there for about a week, flew out to Virginia, seeing him and stuff. He's a truck driver. When he came out, months and months later, I started telling him about kind of what I was diving into, masonry, knowing myself a little bit more. He told me that during that process, he said that he was in a place of prayer. which is a little bit
Wow.
different. You know what I mean? I've never heard of something like that. Like he says, I'm in a place of prayer. And then when he came out, he said something I read in another Masonic book where he said was, there's a difference between belief and faith. Belief is where you just like blindly following. When you come in like some kind of religion, like belief is just, you just kind of eyes closed, you just going where you're going. He says because he's experienced this portion, he has faith. Faith is rooted in truth. It's rooted in facts. Even though it's something that we might not be able to actually feel or tangibly touch. And I'm thinking like, if I was never a Mason, now having that conversation with my father, I now can relate that to that whole entire thing. And now it hits home for me. So when you talk about living up from raising from a dead level to living perpendicular, I literally seen my father do that.
Mm.
In the hospital bed. He's sitting back. He's not moving, not conscious. Like he's gone. So like now, make sure he's touching me a little bit more. And now we're talking about the subject I'm thinking about. It's like I'm uncomfortable because I have a son. My son's 6. We live in an all-white town. The climate that we got going right now, it's inhibiting some of us from doing and moving the way we're supposed to move, being like just human beings. But if you don't have that fear in your heart, if you already accept that you're okay, you can live right now. You can do positive things. You can have like situations like this in a Zoom call. So I'm just bringing that up because like it hit home with me. Like Masonry now is like in my life all day, every day. It's all I can think about because it helps me throughout these things. And I'm working on accepting that death. And I think that's something that a lot of people need to speak on because a lot of these brothers have been doing this for a long time and you guys already have the acceptance. But I'm gonna tell some brothers that's gonna watch this later, you might be like me where we're just now starting this journey of being able to accept it. So keep going because I'll get to a point where House is, Williams, Watson, you know what I mean? We'll get to that point. But I just want to share that, tie that into your own personal story because like it literally is gonna move you, it's gonna change your life, you know?
Absolutely. And when you were speaking of, just you spoke of the rubbish pile and that being your vices and superfluities and whatnot. So when we talk about improving ourselves, we cut off those vices and then it's death to those vices. So we die while we're still alive, like Mike had spoke on, right?
Sure, yes,
So
sir.
we die to our addiction or to things that may be bad for us or make a bad us so that it's a distraction. So we could be devoid of those distractions that allow us to go within and know that spirit, that soul, to prepare ourselves for our physical death, if you get what I mean.
Right. In
I
fact,
get what you're saying, Brother Salam, and then
Sure.
also to go back with what Brother Watson had said, it resonated, it's starting to resonate a little bit more with me because where I'm at, when you said fear, for some death, it fears them, they have a fear in it. I mean, for me, I embrace it. I mean, best believe I respect it. Yeah, I'm not gonna say, hey, I'm bulletproof. No, never that. However, I'm starting to get what you're saying with the rubbish pile, and when we're getting rid of those superfluities, we're getting rid of our vices as well. So one of the things for you to embrace death is to, when you die, if you will, you truly live because you've left all those vices right there in the rubbish pile. You left all those superfluities and that which inhibited you from being all that you can be, empty promises, empty dreams, things of that nature. Then it only becomes scary that when you die, all your hopes and dreams go with you. No, they shouldn't. You should have left them behind because you either improved on them, you worked on them, because, as we go through our journeys, at the end of the day, we're all striving, although, as we all know, none of us are going to ever be perfect. That doesn't stop us from working on perfection or to become as about as perfect as we can get and leave those vices behind and leave those superfluities and those challenges and obstacles that prevent us from becoming the best version of who we can be as we, start to transcend through that, that middle chamber and as we always hear our people say, that upper room,
Yeah, there you go.
bro, Fields, you brought something to my attention too just now when you said the the rubbish pile again, right? So our vices and superfluities actually in that ritual killed us, like they were killing us. You get what I'm saying? So
There you
when
go.
you divest yourself of that as well, you could then live. So you got to knock
Yes.
that off so you can live. Man,
And you
that's
die
beautiful.
every day. That goes back to our last class that we was talking about, because the vices and superfluities, even though we get rid of them, we see them again the next day. They're there. You're
Right.
having to fight them, and sometimes they knock us down. I wanted to touch on something that Brother Williams said. I don't think it was off topic, but I wanted to touch on it a little bit when he was saying about counseling, right?
Mm.
Sometimes you're in that rubbish pile of life, you get knocked down, and you need something to go down into that rubbish pile and reach down and pull you up. You can't get out yourself,
Right.
right? And so I'm also, I'm a 3-time combat veteran, and it was an aunt of mine that talked with me, and she said she had noticed some things that were different about me, and she had told me you should go to counseling, and counseling was kind of taboo for me, because my life I always thought that you're supposed to suck it up, drive on,
That's
you
the
know,
soldier in us, man.
yeah,
They
you a
treat us
Watson.
like that.
Yeah,
Right.
you a Watson, man. Well, you don't feel no weakness.
Mm.
And but I wasn't being all that I could be, because there was a part of that rubbish pile that was holding me down, wasn't allowing me to rise up. And I had to go and get help. Someone had to reach down in that rubbish pile, right? And pull me up with the strong grip of the lion's paw, right? So
Mm.
I wanted to throw that in there just because to say that if there's anyone that's out there right now that's going through some things, here we are, pretty strong men, and we're telling you that as strong as we are, some of us have went and got professional counseling. Get you some help if you really need some help. There's
Right.
nothing weak about that.
That goes
Nothing.
back to our advice that, man, when you pointed out, Mike, in the beginning of your lecture, ego.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah.
Ego
Ooh,
of
yeah.
ours, and
Yeah.
we as black men, and ego of
Mhm.
ours, what prevents us from getting help. That's why we have issues right now that's rampant within our own communities, and that's mental health.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
we're not, they say self-love, self-practice. We're not doing that.
Right.
So I would agree with you on that one, Brother Watson.
That's right. That's right.
And like I said, I try to keep everything personal and related to me. That's why I like doing things unscripted, or try to keep it as unscripted as possible. And my personal experience is like, I'm here today because of my personal experiences, the bad, the right, the wrong, the indifferent. That's who made me me, and that's why I'm able to understand things in a different perspective and not just talk about it. And that's one of my biggest, that's the zealous part of me is I think, and I hate to say it, but we got a lot of brothers in our fraternity that have not truly lived.
Mm.
And then they sit up here and try to battle or say stuff, but they have not truly lived. They have never seen the bottom, and they've never really been to the mountaintop.
Right.
And I generally don't talk about my current situation, because my current situation is very well off, but it was something that I put myself into, and I try to keep humble about that. But my past life is what made me who I am today, and it was those struggles and those pains and those things that I went through that got me here. And I had to fight to get where I'm at. And it was going through pain, and being a 3-time combat vet like Brother Watson, in my last deployment, I swear they was trying to kill me, and because I was in Iraq, Afghanistan, Jordan, and Syria all at the same time in a 9-month deployment, just hitting combat battle zones back to back, back to back. And that was another spiritual awakening for me, just knowing I don't know which country I might die in if I'm gonna make it home. Then I'm sitting on the border of Jordan, Iraq, and Syria in a triangle, like literally a triangle, which is less than 10 kilometers apart from each other, and I could be snatched up and be taken away. Then y'all might have been seeing me on TV being beheaded. Then I'm like, man, who was that? Then only way y'all would have found out who I was if y'all didn't know me already was somebody was like, man, that was a Prince Hall Mason that just got beheaded on TV. But having that, having those experiences, plus losing a lot of people that were close to me, I'm like, all right, if it's my time, it's my time. And I think brothers, I'm not knocking anybody who hasn't had the experiences I had, but a brother who has not experienced life and death to the fullest, if you sat up here and your whole life and you got your mom, your dad, everybody still living, your brothers and your sisters still living, and you never been in a situation where you had to fear anything, how do you really embrace the third degree if you haven't felt pain?
Mm.
And in order to fully embrace the third degree, you have to know what pain feels like to be able to go out and be raised, literally. And I didn't even mention that I lost, before I was even 16, I lost 2 stepbrothers and a stepsister. And I grew up with them as well. My stepbrother, he had just graduated police academy and he got shot on his second job by somebody who he wouldn't let in the club, shot him and killed him. He literally graduated police academy and was dead the next week. And then my sister and my stepsister both died of lupus. And, sitting there watching this, watching this pain, and you really can't do nothing because it's an autoimmune deficiency of their body and it's taking hold of them. And, watching them and you want to do stuff for them and you can't. It's very hard. It's very hard. And then, like I got a personal situation that I'm amongst brothers, and I don't care if it's on YouTube or not, but I had a situation. I've lost 11 kids, and I have 2 now. So watching my wife go through that, people don't, you don't realize how hard it is to watch, to bring life in the world, and it doesn't make it. It doesn't take. So, like I said, I'm speaking from experience. And when I say I'm trying to cut my superfluities, vices, and all of this stuff and leave that behind to make a better person for myself, it comes from being at the bottom. Those are the other things that made me go get counseling and things like that. Some people aren't, they're not open to discuss things like that. Well, I'm open to discuss it now because I get relief by letting it out. And I got that from counseling. And that is part of casting away this life and preparing for the next, if there is a next or whatever. But not sitting up here living in a physical hell, because every situation I just told you about my personal life was a pretty hell for me. And I didn't know no way out of it. And my 2 daughters I have now are miracles. Literally miracles.
It's a beautiful thing, man. And one of the things that as you were going through your lecture, I was taking notes on the different parts, and it was interesting because whereas some people may go through this esoteric part of it, and they may say, well, they may not be able to make the connections, they may not be able to connect the dots, but that whole lecture you gave was masonry from the first to the third degree. I'm sitting there going, oh man, he just hit that. Oh man, he just hit that. One of the ones, the ruffians, and it's different in some rituals, but most of the rituals that I have come across and in mine as well, and I ask brothers from time to time, again, making this walk and talk, what are the ruffians? And they say, oh, them the guys that beat up Hiram Abiff. And then I said, no. What is the ruffian? Like, in my jurisdiction, we teach that first ruffian is like your internal demons, your envy, your jealousness, your debauchery and lasciviousness. And I'm sitting here and I'm watching you go through some of these in the presentation. I'm going, there goes that first ruffian. And then the second ruffian. It seems like, listening to your story, Brother Will, that second ruffian then tow you up. And in my jurisdiction is poverty, illness, sickness. That's what all this is, the second ruffian, friends that betray you, right? But we're supposed to stand up with a degree of integrity and say, when those ruffians come to visit us, we're supposed to deal with them and let them know, no, you're not getting this.
Right.
You're not getting this. My life you may take, but my integrity never. Now, we all know there's that great leveler. That last ruffian, ain't none of us gonna get past that one. And that was the whole theme of the presentation. That third one I was taught was death. You know, in actuality, there's a saying in the Scottish Rite that even death can't separate what virtue has brung together. So even at the end, we're gonna beat death. You know, so but we just gotta make sure that we keep our integrity intact. That's what Grandmaster Hyman Biff taught us about death. Even when death comes knocking at your door, because that first one was like, man, I'm gonna take your life, man. You better give it to me. He said, doesn't matter. I'm gonna keep living these principles. I'm gonna keep divesting myself of my vices and superfluities. I'm gonna keep standing on the square of virtue, no matter what happens. And that, my friend, is how we get through when the ruffians are knocking on our door. We have to keep our integrity. We just have to do what we said we were going to do. When we took those OBs, when we listened to those charges, if we stay steadfast, right, then none of those ruffians are going to get us. And as I said, in the Scottish Rite, it taught me even death. I'm going to beat you, death, as long as I can stay on my square to the grave as I travel across this bridge of life, you know?
Yeah, if I could read something that I read today, you guys touched on a lot of points. I don't want to comment on everything, but it says the candidate covers there is a great mystery. He seeks knowledge and joins with his comrades to train and prepare. But until he sheds his fear of death and personal weaknesses, he is bound, blind, and lost.
Wow.
Wisdom, strength, and beauty are found in compassion, tolerance, and mastery of self. The alchemaic tradition is the burning away of the selfish and worldly, the refinement and purification of the soul, and the transformation of the soul to a higher state through the recognition or application of a higher power.
Wow.
It kind of resonated with me because as men, and I can speak for myself, a lot of times I wasn't honest with myself because it took the first step to say, hey, that I had a problem. I wasn't willing to recognize that I had a problem. And then the second step was, now I need to actually talk about it. Because a lot of times we keep silence those things that we need to let out because we try to be, men, I got it. I don't need no help. It's going to pass. But we fail to realize that life and death is in the power of the tongue. And when we begin to speak positivity and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to get over this, but I need to talk to somebody about this. And then we get a different perspective. And then we get a different view. And we get a different insight. We get some wisdom because we can't do this by ourselves. And it speaks to what was told before, like when we're saying about, when you're doing the degree work, you got to be in it when you bring somebody through. That unity. When I'm worshipful master or I'm doing the degree work, I'm doing it again with you. I'm trying to help you out. What do you need? I'm here for you. So this thing is a full circle thing. It never stops. It never ends. And as we grow and become better day by day, taking that rough ashes to a perfect ashes, chipping out of the way and, making this edges smooth and square and all that good stuff. When the rubber meets the road, that's all good and dandy. It's all the fluffy words, but we all hurt, and sometimes we hurt in silence. And we just got to speak and say, hey, man, I need some help. And I truly believe at the end of the day, that's why a lot of brothers, they begin to, shy away from masonry and don't come to meetings like that or don't come to the activities or don't even participate is because they don't know how to speak. They don't know how to find that voice that says, I need some help. All this stuff is nice, but I'm not feeling it. We had a brother that disappeared because his daughter, she went missing and she was pregnant. So he, to this day, after 3 years, they still have not found her. And he's in the assumption that her and the baby was gone, may possibly be dead. But I told the brothers, I said, well, just because he's not coming, just because he's not paying his dues, doesn't mean he's not a brother no more. Have you reached out to him? Did you go see him? And it's like we find that disconnect automatically, and we don't know what the root of the disconnect is. I know there's a lot of times we think that brothers don't want to study and they don't want to get into the word and stuff like that, but I think at the end of the day, there's something more to what we're not seeing. We're not knowing. Talk to that brother. See where he's at. It's just, this thing is a ministry. Me being a prior youth pastor, I've learned that sometimes people act out because they don't know how to articulate what's really going on in them. They don't know how to put it to words. So sometimes they'll act that in a different way. They may do something bad, or they may be disrespectful, or they may be a little hostile, or they may be, you know what I'm saying, whatever that is, you got to read beneath that. What's going on? Where you at? You know what I'm saying? They just don't have that person to lean on. And some of that goes into adulthood. You got brothers that we've had to counsel brothers because they're doing some stuff, God forbid, to, their families and their wives and things like that. There's some things they just not talking about because they just don't think nobody can help them. And it's like, I've been doing this on my own all this time. What you gonna do for me? That's a real thing. You have to meet them where they're at. When we talk about meet somebody where they at, you got to get down there where they at on the ground and say, hey, brother, I've been there. This is where I'm at. I know what that feels like. Or I don't know, but I can connect you with somebody that does. What do you need?
Right.
Where I got you. Because it's a lot of times I think we become, in our zealousness, we know the truth. We know what needs to happen. And sometimes we forget that brother is here for a reason. He may not be here for the esoteric just yet. He may just be here just to get some brotherly love, to see some people on his same page that want to talk like he talks. He'll get to that in a minute. He just want to see somebody that looks like him, talks like him, and can relate. And I'm pretty sure when you get him in the door and touch his heart, all that other stuff will come. And then he might get into that other. He might want to tap into that. But it's just not right now. He's just not seeing it. It takes a lot of patience to be a worshipful master. It takes a lot of heart. It takes a lot of care. You are really being up there. You are a shepherd of a flock, and people don't see that. When brothers don't call in, they go missing. You got to go to their house. You got to see what they're doing. You got to touch that brother where he is. It's not just a position. It's a work. And I don't just, it's not, and I wouldn't even say it's for, I say any brother in that lodge should take that same mantle. Because if one is missing or one is hurting, we all missing. And I believe if more took that stance, it would be less brothers disappearing.
Have you taken the past master's degree yet?
No, I ain't.
Okay. All right. You haven't.
Yeah,
all right.
Can't go there yet.
Oh, okay. That's what I
ain't got there yet.
Okay, gotcha. But the reason I say that is kind of like when I was talking about house last time. Some of y'all brothers be talking, ain't received these different degrees, but it's in you already. You know what I mean? So I'm just like, wait a minute. Okay, I know he's a worship master, but has he taken the past master's degree? Because literally, you got it. And when you're talking about the journey in the lodge, one thing I always try to get brothers to remember, when we came through masonry on this cycle of life that we're living on our way to death, right? When we come in, we didn't come alone. You had a guide. And as a worshipful master, you reached down to that brother. He wasn't standing up. You told him, you reached out to him, you told him, rise, right?
He's right.
You told him to follow your conductor.
Yeah.
And going back to the lecture just a little bit earlier when he talked about we have fears. He warned you and he said, fear no evil.
Danger.
That's right.
Excuse me. There you go, brother. Thank you for that correction. Fear no danger.
No problem.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, that's what I love about masonry. I've studied a lot of schools of thought. In masonry, man, it's just really, it allowed me to see what the other schools were trying to tell me. You know what I mean? It was trying to reach me. That's what it's neutral. We say masonry isn't a religion per se. It has a religious nature, but it's not religion, right? that's what they say anyway, right? But at the end of the day, it helped me understand the different religious schools of thought that were out there. Brother earlier had a quote. I want to, because old Robert House trying to be all quiet over there, but we ain't gonna let
I
him
was thinking the same thing.
quiet.
He ain't
So I
said
got something. I
nothing
got
yet.
something for him right now, because the brother quoted something earlier about the power of life and death being in the tongue. And I immediately thought about Rob. You just posted that. I don't know if it was it yesterday you posted that, and you told brother, say, be careful what you running around. I'm not gonna steal your thunder. I'm gonna let you ride out on that one.
Go ahead, bro. House.
Because it goes right to what we're talking about. Because you was telling them, don't stop bringing these death words into your life. Is what I was hearing that he was saying anyway.
Uh-huh.
Well, what I was talking about is right now you got, obviously we got the nature of everything that's going on in the world right now with the police brutality, and you have a trend that's going on again for a second time where people are running around saying that they can't breathe, no justice, no peace. And the thing is when you start repeatedly saying things of that nature, it becomes a mantra. And what you say is powerful, and you're putting these words out into the ether, into the Akashic records, into the universe. And what you're doing is you're making things manifest on yourself. Now, regardless of what movement that you're trying to support, you don't have to support a movement by speaking negativity. When you say you can't do something, that means that you will not be able to do it. Right now, we're fighting a pandemic that main thing is upper respiratory infections and upper respiratory restrictions on breathing.
Man, I didn't even put these two together.
I knew he was going there though.
Keep going. Go ahead. Keep going.
So you're sitting here, number one, in the middle of a pandemic that restricts breathing, and you have your government telling you to wear a mask, which also restricts breathing. It's forcing you not to get actual oxidized blood in the system because you're constantly breathing in carbon dioxide from your exhalation. And now you're running around with shirts and banners and you screaming, I can't breathe. So what you're doing is literally damning yourself. And that is putting a spell on yourself. You're literally cursing yourself. And when you're screaming, no justice, no peace, well, you're saying you won't have justice and you will not have peace. So you're literally giving your power away to negativity. And the universe doesn't care about your movement, but the universe does care about your intent and your intentions and what you say. And the things that you say initially starts with a thought. And then that thought has a wavelength that goes into your vocal cords and you release a vibration into the air. It is like the butterfly effect. What you say and do here affects everything that takes place later. If we look at the first time we had the no justice, no peace, and I can't breathe, we had a gentleman, literally the same thing took place. The only difference was he was supposedly selling cigarettes illegally, and 5 police officers came up there and wrestled him to the ground, choked him to death. And now we have an exact same thing take place. The only thing that's different is this brother was supposedly writing a bad check, but we still got police wrestling him down to the ground, basically causing a restriction to his neck, according to the autopsies and things of that nature. And now we have another brother dead. So what you may say and do today may not show up until 5, 6, 7, 8 years later, but it is because of your actions, your words, your thoughts that made that manifest into reality. So we have to be real cautious to what we say. Now, one of the brothers, I can't remember who said it, it was like, he said, well, we can't be perfect. Well, who told you can't be perfect? And what makes you agree with someone that says you can't be perfect? See, the problem is when we accept what somebody else put on us as a limitation, then we in turn make sure that we don't become perfect. Because as I recall in one of the volumes of Sacred Law, it says, be ye perfect as your Father is perfect. So if the person you supposedly follow says, be ye perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect, who then supersedes what he told you? Are you following him or are you following somebody else? See, and this is the problem. When God said Abraham's generations were perfect and he was perfect, Enoch was perfect to the point he didn't even see death. So why do we have all these examples of perfect individuals and volumes of Sacred Law, and we then turn around and say, oh, well, I can't be perfect? You can't be perfect because you said you can't be perfect.
Word, sound, power, faith, hope, and fruition, charity, right?
That's it.
Love. Yeah, speak it into existence. I had commented on Brother House's post. When you said I can't breathe, I said, flip it around. I can breathe.
There you
That's
go.
right.
There you go.
Say, injustice can't breathe. Racism can't breathe. You know, flip it over. And if you remember back in the day, you may see pictures where the guys had picket signs and said, I am a man. If you remember that movement,
Oh man, I love
back
it.
in the day,
Hey, yeah.
I am a man,
Yes,
right?
I have that.
And then we shall overcome. You get what I'm saying? They spoke into existence.
Positive affirmations.
And the one thing, and the one thing that you know, someone years ago had me do an exercise, and I know some people might have looked at Robert's post and said that's kind of petty, right? But it's not. Literally, you have to. You can be inviting death into your life by how you are thinking. And a brother had me do an exercise, and you guys try this one time and try it with some friends of yours. Have them take a piece of paper, draw a line down, and then on one side, ask them to make a list of everything they want in life. And then on the other side, say, make a list of everything you don't want in life. And then see which list is going to be longer. Most people you run into can tell you what they don't want in life. They say, I don't want, I don't want to be in the ghetto. I don't want to be like this. I don't want this. They'll tell you all these don'ts. But when you say, what do you want? Because we need you to speak what you want into existence. Like he said earlier, the universe don't care that you use don't. When you're talking about it all the time, the universe is saying, he must want this. You're saying, well, I don't want to be broke. I don't want to not have a job. And then you wonder why you broke all the time. You don't have a job because you're speaking these things into existence. The universe doesn't hear the word don't. It hears this guy talking about being broke all the time. He must want to be broke.
Yeah.
But what we're not programmed to do is to speak things into existence. Man, what do you want? I had a guy one time, he looked at me and he said, man, I never thought of that, man. I don't know what I want. I just know what I don't want. And I said, man, you got to learn to meditate on the things that you want in life. Your thoughts are like, your mind is like the sun, and your thoughts, those are the sun rays that are going out into the world. You got to send the right ones out there because they're going to come. Go ahead. I'm sorry, brother.
Oh yeah, this is the thing. If it says that God made us in its likeness and its image, and then the Christ says, the things that I do, you shall do even greater. At what point in time do people understand that we have the same abilities that the Creator had? we create life. When we become one flesh with a woman, we bring forth an image like unto ourselves. When we realize God said, let there be light, and light was made. When we say, let there be light, light will be made. So we have to understand the dynamics in the abilities and gifts in which we were given by being made in the image and the likeness of the Creator. And it's the same way with our children. We gave them life, and we instruct them and tell them what they can do. And if we can tell our children what they can do, why can't we tell ourselves what we can do? We too often are losing the understanding of the power that we have in our hands. Even when we have these books that we say we read and we say we try to get an understanding of, and we still don't get it. We talk about ladders and things of this nature and Jacob and stuff, but it was Jacob that went to sleep and saw God face to face. Jacob saw God face to face within himself, in a vision, in a dream, unto himself.
Yeah, so that speaks to the conscious versus the subconscious.
There you go.
The more you speak all this stuff, your subconscious is recording that, and that's what the universe is listening to.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right there. See, because me and the girl was talking about this today. It's like when we get to a subconscious level, then we begin to think at a different wavelength, and then we begin to see those things that we really want.
Right.
Because now you're not just going off what you're seeing, you're going off what you knowing back here. That's why your dreams, they say your dreams speak what's in your mind. A lot of times people say they say things in their sleep, or they see something, or they hear a word from God. It's in your sleep. It's in your subconscious. That's the connection level right there. As long as you begin to go off what you only see and what you only hear, you ain't gonna go any farther than that.
And see, and this is the thing. And you just hit it on the head right there with the conscious. If we have a active conscious and we have a subconscious, if we're constantly negatively talking, saying, I'm not going to be able to do this, I'm not going to be able to do this, in your subconscious, you are literally hindering yourself. You may think you're
I was talking about. That's
yeah,
that's that prison you put yourself in.
Yeah. That's right.
There you go.
You have literally damned yourself, because you may think you're doing something actively, but subconsciously you're saying, oh, you're not good enough for this.
There you go.
You're not good enough to get this job. So no, don't go fill out the application.
Could you say that you at that point are raping yourself? Going back to
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And brother,
Mentally.
in Mike's book, he said that the senior deacon, correct me if I'm wrong, is the subconscious, or acts as the subconscious.
Correct.
He's the conductor. He's the one you're following and fearing no danger. You get what I'm saying?
Well, yeah.
That's Anubis holding them scales balanced that I talk about.
Get that gut feeling. It's your subconscious telling you something ain't right, or you need to be doing this. That's why you got to feed yourself positivity all the time. Because
all the time.
Your subconscious is going to do what's right. And then you can go into spaces where some things say you don't belong, but you're going to know you're going to belong. You're going to act like you belong, and you're going to do like you belong, because it's just second nature. Second nature going to kick in. I've been in places where I'm not qualified, but I fed myself positivity, so I do what I have to do, and people going to recognize that. I don't sweat it. It just happens.
Right.
And you know what? I like Michael's I like Michael's interpretation of that better than any mythological interpretation you can give me. This goes back to what we were saying earlier. Don't tell me about these stations. What are these stations going to do for me in 2020? You see what I'm saying? It's like, I used to say that to brothers. They said, well, I'm going to Lodge tonight. And I had a little joke I used to say to brothers. I said, not me. They said, you're not coming to me tonight? I said,
you're already there.
I'm coming to visit myself tonight. When I sit in the lodge, I used to sit there and I look, and I'd go through the stations. I look at the the checkerboard floor, and I say, man, that's that good and evil in me, ain't it? You know. And then I look around, and everything in there is me. You're visiting yourself from the time you knock on that door. Could those be thoughts on the outside that are trying to get in, and then they can't get in unless we towel them? I'm just saying, man. I would rather work with that more than some. You know, I don't want to spook people out, man. You know, we got to make this stuff relevant to us today. That's how we build our character, how we become better, how we raise up out of that rubbish pile, right? By making it real.
Right.
And see, that's one.
Johnson, could I dip in here real quick for y'all move on? Cause I see y'all running down the street. I just gotta go back
we
to
running.
We on that train.
Yeah, we running down.
I was like, if I don't get this in, I ain't getting it in.
Yeah.
But based on what Brother House said, and also, you know, what everybody said, that reminded me of Psalm 82. So I had to pull it up on a split screen real quick.
Don't do them like that.
But you know, that was always powerful for me, man, because when you look at Genesis and all these things that happen, you can't just tell me that we were just here. We were just people, right? So in Psalm 82, it starts off by saying, God standeth in the congregation of the mighty. He's judges among the gods.
Ooh, among who?
These aren't just people just hanging out here, right? And then let's just say you came at it from the other level, right? Let's say you came at it from the other level. Then they give you the clarification. They tell you who you talking to.
Yes, sir.
I have said ye are gods.
Ooh, not
and
you.
You are the children of the Most High. Come on, man.
Can you say that one more time, brother? Can you say that one more time? Just give it to us one more time.
I have said ye are
gods.
And all of you are children of the Most High. I'm like,
now, you're not the Most High now, but you are children. You're a child of the Most High. You know, we don't want an ego trip too bad. We find out we gods running around here. You know, that goes back to the Kabbalah too. You know, when it talks about, you know, those husks coming down and being encapsulated in matter into these bodies. Inside of you is the divine. You know what I mean? And that divine is yearning to get out of here. Now, I think it's necessary. It was something in the lecture that he gave when he was talking about life itself, right? Us moving through this life is necessary for us. I think he said to rise up your consciousness. Raise your consciousness up. And so it's necessary. It's not like a waste of time that we're entombed, right, in this living grave, I guess you would call it. It is necessary for us to rise up our level of consciousness. Like if I asked you brothers right now, I use this one a lot. I said, wiggle your left toe. And you brothers would wiggle your left toe. You wasn't even conscious of that left toe a minute ago, but the toe was there. And I think that's where we're going. We're trying to be more aware and more conscious, not of things that are not there, but things that are there that we're just not conscious of. That makes sense.
There you go.
See, I think one of the biggest things, and you touched on it, Brother Watson, is a lot of Masons don't become the characters that we're portraying.
Oh, that's
And if you're not becoming Hiram, and you're not learning who or what Hiram represents, because Hiram's name is not a proper noun. And that's the biggest problem. People think Hiram represents a physical character or a person, and it doesn't. It represents a concept. So if you are not becoming that concept, then how then can you be raised to be the perfect example of that concept? So the biggest issue that I see is people are just going through the motions. And if you're just going through the motions, you can never consciously attach yourself to what those things represent. And if you don't know what they represent, then you can't really see how that's supposed to be playing on your conscience to make you a better man. Right. In order for Masonry to make you a better man, you must know the concepts in which Masonry is providing to you to understand how that's going to make you a better man. If you are saying, okay, I'm portraying Hiram Abiff And then you know that Hiram represents a noble man, a man that has been exalted. That means a man that has been raised and put to a higher state. And you understand that higher state represents a high level of consciousness because he was once dead, and we know that that dead represents a sense of ignorance. And that sense of ignorance now being exalted into a nobleman or an exalted one, that person now has knowledge. It's a reason why the writers and the authors of the Masonic rituals picked certain people and put those people in certain places, because they knew that these characters were concepts, that their names represents verbs, that those people or those human-like symbols actually are there to play a conscious role in the mind and the mental capacity of men that study and understand these languages. It's a reason why they used a name such as Hiram. Now, we use Solomon as a translation of Shlomo, but they never did change the name Hiram from its original Hebrew word Hiram. It's a reason for that. And if people don't understand, well, hey, we use a translation of a name over here, but for this person, we use the real essence of the word, Hiram, then it should tell you, well, let me research this name. What does this name represent? Who is this person supposed to be? I'm now playing this person. What is that supposed to do for me? What is that supposed to make me reflect on? If I'm supposed to be a nobleman, and I understand what a nobleman means and what's the purpose and the place of a noble person, then that will make me subconsciously walk, talk, and act as someone that has been exalted and is noble.
That's right. That's right. And I think it's what Jesus was talking to Peter. And he says, upon this rock, I'll build the church. Come on now. And the gates of hell, what are the gates? Come on now. What we see, what we hear, what we speak. Come on. And the keys to the kingdom, it's all in there. It's all in there. So you speaking good stuff, man. It's good stuff.
Now you're getting into some other houses. I think mine was Golgotha. Let me shut up.
Oh, no, it did.
Come on
No,
now.
hey, come on with the Calvary now. Come on with that place of Calvary.
Because Mike, you can't have that backdrop there with them two
exactly
images. Not talking about the skull.
Exactly. You can't. Hey, what do you say? You can't tease you with it. One of the things that I had a scripture. Man, he came right in there with it. I was gonna let it go, but the skull and crossbone, right? Because we see that in the third degree, right, on the tracing board. And there was a scripture, Psalms 5:15. And what made me think about this is when I was looking over Michael's presentation, and he mentioned about the mid pillar, right? And it says his legs are pillars of marble, set upon sockets of fine gold. And what bring me with that scripture right there is when it likened the legs onto pillars. And a lot of folks, when they look at the skull and crossbones, they don't realize that those bones are femur bones. Yeah, they're two legs. And I know I'm going off into the speculative jungle here, right? But could those be emblematic of pillars?
Yes.
Right? And then you have the skull in the center, kind of similar to what I'm looking at when I look at Michael's picture. I see two pillars, and I see him in the center. When I look at Jesus on the cross, I see two people next to him, two pillars, and him in the center. And I kind of thought that Michael was going to run away with that a little bit more, right? And that mid pillar, I said he gonna go into. I haven't seen him touch the Kabbalah yet, though. You know what I mean? I'm waiting for us to have one of these. Okay, it's a reason behind it. Okay, gotcha. But at the end of the day, what I love about Masonry is our ability to use our conscience, to use our ability to think and reason, to speculate. So like what I just said to you guys, it's not dogmatic. You can take it or leave it, right? The skull and crossbones could mean something totally different to everyone, right? But as I was thinking about this lecture, it brought that back to me because it is a symbol of death, right? And I'm saying, wow, you know, that it's what you got the skull in the middle, and you got these two crossbones. And like I said, most people don't know those are femur bones, is what they are. Two legs.
Man, that's the only emblem I have on my car.
The skull and crossbone.
Skull and
Yeah.
crossbones.
Yeah. It
Well,
scares a lot of folks, right? Now I always say to people, if a skull scares you, went back to what he said earlier, where do you think Jesus was crucified at?
at the place of the skull.
Okay, come on now. Let's not spook this stuff out. You know, if you say, why they got skulls in masonry? Come on, man. You know, it's everywhere. The skulls are everywhere. There's nothing to be afraid
You
of.
gotta research it, and you know, I mean, going into Shakespeare and what is it, Hamlet, when he's holding that skull, he said, "Alas, poor Yorick, I knew him well."
Wow. Yeah.
When you take that and you think about
But
that,
the thing is, why automatically look at a skull and a crossbones as death when we know in the womb the skulls and the bones are developed, and that is a symbol of life.
Beautiful.
So, you know, it's we have allowed people to form our conscience for us, and that's the problem. Because
all the
simple
society right
biology tells us that when the body has started to develop and a skull and skeletal system has developed, that is indication of life. And that is when they start to say, well, we cannot do abortions when this development has taken place, because that is the indication of life. That brain that houses the consciousness is surrounded in a skull. So to just automatically assume that the skull represents death is a problem, because if you follow Christ, it was upon the cross that he transcended when he gave up the ghost, as they say. So to look at something like that should actually show you a sense of elevation beyond that of a physical realm to a spiritual realm. And it's really, really simple for those who honestly know thyself. Because if you take the time out to meditate and understand what is taking place within yourself, then you will know that this is not your first life. And that there has been multiple lives for the thing that allows you to hear yourself think. Because you're consciously listening to yourself think. So what is that is actually listening? Because there's something talking
that
and
all seeing
something listening.
Yeah, that all seeing
And it's also something that physically talks.
Yeah,
so
there you go.
And as they say, three must agree. So if you are listening and talking and speaking, that is three entities taking place inside of one being. And that's the true Trinity that people have completely lost the concept and understanding of.
But you see how we did that tonight, though. The beauty of all of that is that earlier, I think it was Michael gave a different interpretation of three must agree. You gave one, but but you see how both of those speculative viewpoints caused us to start elevating, meaning my mind, now I got to get off this call and start thinking about, like, what was they talk? Okay, that's what Masonry was supposed to be about. It was never supposed to be dogmatic at all. And as you looked at the skull and crossbones, in one instance, you see death. And depending on what level of consciousness you're on, you can look at those bones as where the bone marrow is at, right? So it could be an emblem of life and death at the same time. It just depends on what consciousness is looking at it. One consciousness sees it as death, another one can see it as life, another one can see it as life and death. And some of them say that's dealing with the devil. You know, it's just depending on where you're at in your level of awareness in life.
But some of that, when we speak confusion, is the desensitization of society. So you see a lot of movies giving you an emblem like the 5-pointed star or the skull and crossbones or whatever. They put it in a horror movie and you just think, oh, that's just, I ain't dealing with all that. Or like we had a post the other day, we talked about Baphomet. So there was confusion in. And then they thought that was the devil and Lucifer and all that good stuff. Again, using words that you heard on TV and everything you done grew up with, misconceptions. But until somebody give you some insight and said, nah, brother, that ain't even close. This is what it really is. And then even they will probably still deny what you're telling them because they're going off of their faith in what they've been taught. So they kind of fear believing something new because, again, like we talked about last time, I'm giving up something. I'm unlearning and relearn. Am I going to lose something? What am I going to lose by unlearning this? Am I going to lose salvation? Am I going to die? Because, again, there's that fear that's always ingrained in us. If you believe this, you sin it. You're going to die. You're going to go to hell. It's a cycle. To get us out of that, you got to unlearn all that stuff. And that takes time. That's hard.
Superstition.
Yeah.
Superstition.
Yeah.
Superstition is a horrible thing to be trapped in, because superstition is something that you have accepted but yet have taken the time out to dive into to see if it's real.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem is that superstition is, like you said, breeds fear, and that fear is bred through ignorance. And because of this ignorance, fear, and superstition, mankind has stopped in this level of progression. And because mankind is stopping in this level of progression, we will never get out of the holes in which we are in. Just like now, we have a level of police brutality that is taking place. And it's taking place because of unnecessary accepting of believing that a human being, because of his skin color, is lesser than another human being. And because of that level of ignorance and that belief that someone is superior because of a different hue and skin color, then allows us to destroy and kill ourselves. Because where you breed ignorance here, you breed fear over here, and that fear then causes you to do things that you shouldn't have to do.
Right.
And that's the biggest problem. That's the thing that Freemasonry supposed to help mankind understand, is get knowledge over superstition and flawed beliefs. If we have knowledge of something, it is like in Matthew 24, he says, build your house and be prepared as if you know the thief is coming. If you know the thief is coming, then you will be properly prepared for that thief. But
you know what though? And the Scottish Rite, oh man, some of the best teachings I've ever ran into in the Scottish Rite, man. And the Scottish Rite, it teaches us there's 5 enemies to the human condition.
That's
right.
5 of them.
And ignorance. Ooh, that dude is something else. Matter of fact, I ain't gonna give it all. Yeah, that's okay. I ain't gonna give you no secrets. I ain't gonna give you nothing that's gonna get you in any trouble. But that ignorance, you notice some of you brothers in here in those houses, so the ignorance is off by itself when you hit that battery, right?
Yeah.
All along. Because it gives birth to all the rest of them, which is, house hit on one of them. Superstition is an enemy of the human condition. Fanaticism, despotism.
Oh, come on now, tyranny.
And ambition.
There you go.
Those are some of the key enemies to the human condition. And we say the human condition, the development of the human consciousness.
Yes.
And you have to fight them. And ignorance is at the root of it all. Like when me and a brother was having a discussion the other day, and I was telling him, he said, hate. I said, ignorance is at the root of hate, right? Why do you hate something? You're ignorant of something about it. Then you can go on and on and on. Ignorance is to me the number one enemy to the human condition. And that's why Masonry is so up on light. It says we're in pursuit of light. You want light, you want more light, you want further light. Why light? Because light is knowledge. That's what we're in the pursuit of. And anytime, you know, this goes back to the little debates we was having on Facebook. when I was a worship master and I sat in the East, and I was learning my part, you know, I learned it before I got there, right? And I couldn't figure out, and I mentioned this to you brothers one time, I couldn't figure out why they put idleness next to immoral and unmasonic conduct. You guys know that part in there? It says strictly forbidding.
Yeah.
All idle, immoral, or unmasonic conduct. And I said, the ones who wrote this must think that idleness is synonymous with those other two. And so that's, I go into this, it's like, you cannot remain idle to the vehicles of growth and development masonry and still look me in my eyes and tell me you're a Mason. It doesn't work that way.
Man,
It does not work that way.
Videos from today with that one phrase.
Yeah.
Man, past master Charles Watson is going in. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Y'all hitting some high points. I want to touch on ignorance real quick. Starting to get late. I know some of y'all on the East Coast, but you know the root word of ignorance is ignore. And within ignore, you have know and gnosis. There, and that ig or ignoring is that they're essentially shutting off the ability to receive something new. And this whole lecture is about getting rid of ignorance and embracing getting rid of that ignorance to know life so we can live and be prepared for death.
That's right.